Seated for now. We'll sing again in a little bit.
Well, I'm thankful that we get to use our hymnal tonight, and that's something that we are teaching our children, the value of the hymnal, and hopefully something that they will be able to teach their children and use that. But tonight we're going to turn to the hymnal, the prayer book in the middle of our Bible, of the Psalms, and Psalm 69, the 69th Psalm. And if you would, turn your attention with me to verse 30 of Psalm 69. David writes, "I will praise the name of God with a song." Again, that's exactly what we want to do tonight, to praise God's name with a song that you choose from this hymnal. And the reason we do this is because just like we're commanded to pray and do so regularly, every Wednesday night we come together for a time of prayer, in the same way, singing has been one of the primary ways God's people have worshiped for millennia. And so if tonight we could somehow get into a time machine and go back 1,000 years, and then 2,000 years, and 3,000 years, and join God's people in worshiping, they would be singing from this inspired hymnal that we call the Psalter. I had an opportunity several years ago to go to a church, and at this church they sung only a cappella. So there was no piano, there was no organ, there was no choir director or orchestra director. The song leader simply got up, hummed a few notes so that everybody could be on pitch, or try to be on pitch for some of us, and every song was sung with just voices. It was beautiful. They also had another feature of their singing, and that was that it was only psalms. I looked at their songbook and discovered that it was the Psalter. It was just 150 psalms put to meter, put to tunes. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's certainly biblical that we would sing God's words back to him, that we would sing psalms, but I don't think that's the only thing that we have to sing. When Paul instructs us in Ephesians 5:19 to sing to each other, that is a command. And that's difficult to do virtually. That's one of the reasons we gather together, is not only to edify each other in the Word and edify each other with Christian fellowship, but to actually edify each other by singing to one another in psalms. But then there are two other categories, hymns and spiritual songs. And so here, David says, I will praise the name of God with what? With a song. But there's something else that we want to do tonight in the second half of verse 30, and we'll magnify him, magnify God with thanksgiving. Now, I wonder if someone here this evening under the age of 10 can tell us, what does thanksgiving mean? Looking at Amos and Ezra on the front row, Mike and Andrew. Yes. To give thanks. Exactly. It's really pretty simple. You have the noun and the verb embedded in the word itself. It's merely giving thanks. And that is exactly what we want to do. If we are God's children, then we should praise God's name with song, but then he says, you should magnify me by giving me thanks. We know that giving thanks to God isn't something that's relegated to just one weekend of the year in the month of November, but that every month of the year, every day of our life, all of our life should be continual praise to God. It's not enough to just tip our hat to God on Thanksgiving, and maybe you go around the table and everybody gives something that they're thankful for, and then we get into the real purpose of Thanksgiving, turkey and feasting and football and shopping and pumpkin pie. No, that's not the purpose of Thanksgiving. When, as Americans, we look at our culture, it barely takes time to say what they're thankful for. Maybe they don't even give a thought to that, but then they pull up the Black Friday ads. So instead of being grateful for what we have, we're already looking for the next new thing that we think we need. And now even some of those sales already start on Thanksgiving Day. Stores are opening and online sales are happening in full force. Instead, we should give thanks not just for times of plenty and bounty, but in whatever state we're in, even in the state of California. We're going to hear a testimony tonight from someone who's living there. In fact, we need Bible-believing churches in California and on the West Coast. I'm thankful for the Davissons and God's calling them to a vibrant evangelistic church in California. I'm thankful for Ron Smith, who's been serving there as one of our church planters now for decades in California City, California. I was at his church 20 years ago. I'm thankful for this Hope for Reno team, taking the gospel to the second least church city in the United States. Paul says, whatever state I'm in, I've learned to be content. If I'm abased, I'm content. If I'm abounding, I'm content. Why? He says, because for me, to live is Christ. If I die, I'm content, because to die is gain. And then he says in verse 20 of Philippians 1, according to my earnest expectation and my hope that in nothing I shall be ashamed, but that with all boldness as always, so now also Christ shall be magnified in my body, whether by life or by death. How do we magnify God in our body? By having this kind of attitude of thanksgiving in whatever state that we're in. That's what David says he wants to do. I want to magnify God by giving him thanks in whatever state I'm in. Now, how do we magnify something? We know that a magnifying lens is used in two pretty essential tools for scientists, microscopes and telescopes. A microscope does what to an object? It takes something that's really small and it makes it look big. It fills our vision with something that's actually minuscule. A telescope takes something that's already huge but is far away, and because of that distance it looks small. The telescope takes something that's already huge and fills our vision with it. So we are called to magnify God. Are we supposed to be a microscope or a telescope? A telescope. God is not this minuscule little g God who's so small that we need to somehow make him look bigger than he really is. We're not called to be con artists, to bait and switch people. We are called to take a God who is infinite and majestic and give people a glimpse of that glory, of that majesty. You say, well, how do we do that? What part of our life allows us to magnify God? He says, your thanksgiving. That your response of thanksgiving to God is the way that you magnify God. When people hear you praising God and thanking God, it magnifies God. This is why when your kids are fighting each other, you have to make them say words like, I'm sorry. It was 8 years ago, around this time on Thanksgiving, that our oldest son, Micah, was 2 years old at the time, and he and his 3-year-old cousin, Caden, had been getting in some knockdown dragouts over Thanksgiving. And I remember having a long talk after disciplining Micah and saying, you need to go out and say, I'm sorry to Caden. And I couldn't believe how hard it was for a 2-year-old to swallow his pride. It's hard to say, I'm sorry to your rival that you're in the midst of mortal combat with. Because saying that means that you're giving them some ground. You're magnifying them. And in the same way, when we say thank you, we are not magnifying ourselves, we're magnifying this other entity. We're saying it's because of you that I have what I have. I'm thanking you, I'm giving you thanks. And so sometimes the reason that we don't want to thank God and give him glory is because we want to magnify ourselves. We want to receive the glory. But when we give thanks, it magnifies and pleases God. Look at verse 31. This also shall please the Lord better than an ox or bullock that hath horns and hoofs. So sometimes it's actually easier to give God a sacrifice that you've earned. Maybe as a man, you think, if I can go kill this trophy with these huge antlers and then give that to my wife as a present to put over our fireplace. I'm sure that's what she really wants in her living room. But we think if I can earn it and give it to God like Cain did, then I still retain some of my glory and I still magnify myself instead of giving him the credit that he deserves. Maybe right now you're mad at God for not allowing you for life to go the way that you expected it. Maybe you're upset at God for allowing you to lose someone that you love, but you say, you know what, I'm going to keep coming to church, and I'm going to very grudgingly put my offering in the plate because I don't want to rob God of what's his. But you don't do it cheerfully. You don't do it with thanksgiving. God says, look, I want you to do it with a thankful heart. I mean, he doesn't need horns and hooves. He owns the cattle on 1,000 hills and all the other hills as well. He doesn't need your wealth. He's the God of the universe. He owns all of the world's wealth. He doesn't need our cows. He doesn't need our cash. He wants our hearts. And so that's why he wants us to give, yes, to open our hands, to not hold things with white knuckles, but he wants us to do it as cheerful givers, with thanksgiving, because we want to magnify him. Some of you tonight are going through a trial, and you say it's hard to give thanks to God in a trial. David was going through a trial. We don't know exactly from the historical context which of the multitude of trials he went through, but look at verse 29. He says, but I am poor and sorrowful. I'm afflicted. I'm in pain. Some of you tonight are suffering physically. Some of you are suffering loss emotionally. Maybe you're suffering spiritually. Your soul is sorrowful. There's nothing wrong with that. Jesus says to his disciples in the Garden of Gethsemane, my soul is sorrowful unto death. Stay here and keep watch with me. You may be suffering, but God is your salvation, and he can rescue you from that suffering so you can actually give thanks to God even in the midst of your trial, even in the midst of your suffering. Look at the result in verse 32. The humble shall see this and be glad, and your heart shall live that seek God. God promises that he will make your heart glad, that he will revive your heart. When you humble yourself before him and seek him with all your heart. This is a wonderful truth. God doesn't say if you can do something great, if you can achieve this spiritually, then you're going to earn happiness, then you're going to earn joy. He says, no, you actually have to do the opposite. You have to come humble. You have to humble yourself. You have to make him great, magnify him with thanksgiving. And that's what we want to do tonight. We want to praise God with song, and then the second half of verse 30, we want to magnify him with thanksgiving in whatever state we find ourselves this Thanksgiving weekend. And so we're going to take some favorites, and then we're going to hear a testimony from Jen Davisson. Jen and her husband Troy were Morningsiders. He was a deacon here for many years, and this year they went through a time of incredible pain and suffering and loss that she's going to, I believe, talk about in her testimony. But she's still giving God thanks. And by doing that, we have a template for us that all of us can do the same thing, that we can magnify God with thanksgiving in whatever state we're in. Pastor John.
Amen. We'll start over here this time. Brother Iowa, 380. 380. You've been sitting for a while. Let's take this opportunity to stand. Once again, this song is better sung standing up anyway. It'll be good for you. We Amen. We'll stay standing for this one. Brother Woods. 388, just a couple of pages over there. 388, a song that we sing from time to time, one of Pastor Carrier's favorite hymns. If you've ever been out on a boating trip that got longer than you intended, you know exactly where the writer of this hymn was coming from, the haven of rest. Be seated. This section here, somebody we had? Linda. 784. Did you know this hymn book had that many numbers in it? It does. Number 784. I believe in miracles because I believe in the God who created nature itself. Over here. Yes, sir. 580. 580. 580. I'm told that the author of this hymn had written it as a poem, had it published, and was surprised to visit a church one day and hear it sung. It had been set to music by William B. Bradbury, and back in those days, they didn't always ask you. But it's a wonderful setting of Psalm 23. In these days, they don't always ask you either, but it's a wonderful setting of Psalm 23. Let's sing it together. Jen, won't you come? As she's coming, let's sing that chorus just once more, just our voices. He leadeth me.
Morningside. What a joy to be back. When I was walking in this morning, I saw so many new faces and so many new people, and that brought me such joy to know that we're growing. For those of you that don't know me, as Pastor said, my name is Jen Davisson, and my husband and my 4 daughters and I moved here in 2016. We quickly found Morningside and almost immediately joined. We love this place. Pastor gave us a book right when we joined, and it was, I think it's called I Am a Member, and it went through serving and a whole bunch of other things on how to become a good member and a productive member. And my husband and I love this book, and we just dove right in. Both of us will tell you to this day that underneath Pastor Crockett, we really learned to serve, and that would be really instrumental in the days to come. In November of 2020, my family and I got COVID. And I was really restless we had the 2-week quarantine back then, and I was really restless the first 2 or 3 days. I was really struggling, feeling like we were gonna lose our place. I had to get back to church because I had to get back into our ministries, and there was just a lot of weird, restless thoughts that I had. And around the 3rd day, I remember I was kind of struck with the idea of what if the reason I was feeling this way is because the Lord was getting ready to move and do something in our lives. And what if I'm wasting these 2 weeks with my family? In hindsight, I truly believe that was from the Lord, because that would be the last time, the real calm right before the storm. In December of that year, so a month later, my mom got COVID. And I talked with her the first day that she was diagnosed with it, and I told her, she'd be fine. A lot of people get it. Drink your fluids, you'll be fine. You'll be all right. 2 days later, they took her to the hospital, and her oxygen was at 56%, her oxygenations. And right off the bat, they sort of were talking percentages with us. So we kind of all felt like this wasn't good. So my 2 brothers and my sister and I, we all FaceTimed each other, and we made the plan that my sister and I would fly in to Lancaster to be with my dad. We didn't know if he would get it at that time, and he never displayed symptoms. During that time, I learned a lot, but for time's sake, there's 2 that I really want to hit. The first one is that in my immature Christian mind at that time, I kind of tended to think of victories, Christian victories, being these highs. Moses in the Red Sea, or David and Goliath, these big monumental moments. What an awesome God we serve, that he takes our weakest moments and makes them strength. That's an awesome God. Because victories also look like Stephen and the stonings, or my mom's death, the death of saints. What an awesome God that he can take our weakest times and turn them into strengths. The second thing I learned is that no isn't punishment, or because we're not good enough. It's not a lack of faith. When God tells us no, sometimes it's not because we didn't do something, or not always, or because we lacked faith, or during this trial with my mom, when we got there, I prayed a lot of things. And obviously I prayed that God would spare my mom, and spoiler alert, that did not happen. I prayed for that she would not suffer, and the next day her lungs collapsed and they did an emergency surgery on her. My mom's nurse was a Lancaster Baptist member, and she was speaking to my dad. She was seeking kind of counsel from him because it was traumatic for her. And she said, while we were all there, she said that my mom's screams will echo in her mind until her dying day, and that she didn't understand my mom's suffering. So we knew that my mom suffered. I prayed for things like for me to be able to go in there, my sister to be able to go in and see her. And we tried, I'd always heard, do what you can do and then pray that God will do what you can't. And so we tried everything. We tried volunteering. We tried to get a job. We tried moving her to hospice. We tried moving her home care. And God just continually shut the door. There's a whole bunch of other no's, but I'll stop there. But my point is that God did say no a lot during that time. And we learned that that's not always because of a lack of a faith or anything that you're doing. Sometimes God just says no, and our job is just to accept what he says. On January 8th, the doctor went into my mom's room, and my mom, even though she was intubated, she was awake, and my mom is very sassy, and so she was responding very well. And all of a sudden, he said he turned over and just something changed. She stopped responding. The machine took 100% over breathing for her. And so he ran all these tests before he was to call my dad the next morning, and he said, there is nothing wrong with her other than her lungs. She didn't have an aneurysm. There was, they called it an unexplainable medical phenomenon. And that, in his words, it was like my mom's soul just left her body. At that point, that was the first day in California that they were allowing family members to go in. So my dad actually got to go and see her that day. And he came back and told us, that she was gone. Her body was still alive at that point because she was on the intubating. She was intubated, and it was a trying time in Lancaster. A lot of people were sick at that time. They'd called in Samaritan's Purse. There was a lack of oxygen, a lack of machines, and so we made the decision to go ahead and take her body off of the machine. So on January 9th, my 37th birthday, my mom's body died. Right after my mom's funeral, they started asking us, talking about maybe perhaps we could move and help with my dad, help with the ministry, different things like that. But they said that we shouldn't make these decisions emotionally because, this is something, it's either God's moving or he's not, and don't do anything in emotion. So when we got home, I quickly told my husband I didn't feel that I was capable of really even contributing to the conversation because I was very emotional. We would find out before we made the decision that my sister was pregnant, and she lived 4 hours away, and then my dad had just lost his wife, so I felt like I could not contribute to this conversation. But I told him that I pray with him, and that whatever he decided whatever he thought that God was doing, I would follow. And he spoke with Pastor Crockett, and I know that they prayed together. And it just became very obvious that God was moving us to California. That's probably the first time in my life that it was so obvious. If God had written a postcard, it couldn't have been more obvious that that was what we were supposed to do. And if we'd said no, we would be directly disobeying God. I think God has such a sense of humor because I had always said that there were two kind of stipulations to me serving God, which is funny to even say that. But when I was younger, it was the one I would not move to California. And then the second was that I would not live around my dad because being the pastor's kid, and I'm looking at Pastor Crocker's kids right now. Being the pastor's kid is tough. You're in a fishbowl. And so those were my two stipulations, and then God moved us to California to work with my dad. So, we sold our house here, and we moved there on July 2nd. It was the first day we arrived to Lancaster. That is the very same day my brother died, my oldest brother. We would not know that day. We would actually not know that for a couple days to come. My brother, 1 year prior to his death, his wife had separated from him. And through that trial, Daniel really came back to the Lord. He was faithful in church. He was doing one-on-one discipleship with his pastor. But because he was separated from his wife, and I was on most of his emergency contact numbers, they didn't know quite legally who they should contact, whether it was me or his legal wife. And so through all of this, it took some time to figure out who to tell. They did tell his wife, and his wife called me, and we were on our way home from family camp. And I was in the restroom with my daughter when I got the phone call, and so I had to cross the restaurant with a whole bunch of people there to tell my dad that his oldest son, his first child, had died 6 months after my mom. So that was the hardest thing I think I've ever done, and I hope that remains the hardest thing I've ever done. But once he passed away, my whole family, didn't matter where we were at, we all just felt this incredible burden. We couldn't even really honestly feel like we were grieving, and we just felt this huge burden, like we were getting ready to step into some kind of spiritual bloodbath. I mean, we just felt so much burden to pray. And so every night, it was just the most palpable feeling of like, we just need to pray. God's going to do something. We just need to pray. And when we got to Daniel's funeral, 90% that were there were not saved. And quite a few got saved at his funeral. And I can't think of a better testimony for a Christian than to say your death brought people to him. That's amazing. So that happened at Daniel's funeral, and we were very, very excited about that. I have a few stats on California that I'd like to read real quick. California has a population of over 40 million souls, and that's 12% of the U.S. population. California has over 75 cities that have over 100,000 people. LA being one of those, and LA actually has population of about 4 million people. In LA, there's only 2 fundamental churches and a population of 4 million. California grosses annually in state products $2.8 billion, and if it was its own country, it would be the 5th largest economy in the world. And there's several studies, but all of them are conflicting. But where California falls politically and with our personal and religious freedoms, the rest of the states eventually follow within, and it's anywhere between 7 to 15 years. So California is a vast and needy state. When my mom died, I think for the first time, heaven became the most real for me that it's ever been. There's a song that talks about, I can hear the roars in heaven as a space between where it's thin. And her death for me was that. I could almost see it, Can you imagine the first steps on heaven's shores? Like the first time, I'm talking about like those first seconds, when for the very first time in our entire existence, we have no cares, all of the burdens we're carrying, all the physical burdens we're carrying. For the first time, we don't have any, and there's no way for us to even know how heavy those are because we've never not been without them. And for that very first couple seconds, can you imagine how light that must feel? And then to see God's Son, for the very first time ever, heaven became very real for me. And there was a drum beat in my heart before this, but it started getting louder with my mom's death. And when my brother died, it just became deafening to me. And that is, if my testimony tonight, it can say anything. My mom and my brother, when they died, they went to heaven. The second that they passed from this one to the next one, they went to heaven, and that can be attributed to a soul winner. And I was looking around, and I'm like, what a blessing. I can't even complain. I can't complain that my mom or my brother died back to back like this because they went to heaven. But all around me, there are people dying that don't have that. And I'm holding the ticket. I'm holding the very thing that I could give them that they could share in the same thing I've got. And I'm keeping silent. One of the sad statistics that I heard from Dr. Gibbs is that only 6% of evangelical Christians ever tell anybody else about Jesus. So only 6% of us are sharing what we know. And Pastor Crockett, in one of his messages while we were here, said, does your neighbors not come into church because you're not inviting them? These were all things that were sort of loud in my head before, but after my brother's death, it just became so clear to me that what I want with my life is to be a soul winner. I am a third-generation Christian, and my salvation can be attributed to someone who knocked on my grandpa's door, and he was throwing beer cans at him and swearing at him, and he didn't quit. He kept coming back, and he kept coming back, and he kept coming back, asking him, and finally my grandpa got saved, and I'm standing here today because someone didn't give up. Someone shared with them. And my mom's in heaven right now because someone shared with them that Jesus died. So if my testimony could share anything tonight, it'd be that all around us there are souls dying, going to hell. And I have a verse that has just really been speaking to me, and that's John 9:4. I must work the works of him that sent me while it is day. The night cometh when no man can work. My brother and my mom's time in the day is done. They are now in heaven. But mine is not. But my time will be a vapor, and it'll go quicker than I can even imagine, and I want my life to count for something, and I want it to be for souls. And so if I could encourage anything tonight, it would be tell someone about Christ. Share someone. Be the reason that someone's granddaughter is standing on a pulpit saying, it's that person. That person told my grandpa about the Lord. Thank you.
It's been good to be here tonight for me. I hope it has been for you too. The final song we're going to sing together tonight was written by a person who, as far as I know, didn't sing anything but psalms. It was a prayer that person just wrote in personal devotions before the Lord. Eventually it got published in a collection of Puritan prayers. The Puritans were the people who thought the Pilgrims were a little bit too strict, but not much too strict. And they, like the Pilgrims, sang only psalms in their church services and only a cappella, and generally without even harmony. You were only allowed to sing the melody. But many of them have rich walks with the Lord and devotion times. And the Valley of Vision is a collection of Puritan prayers that got published a few decades ago. And a couple of decades ago, a musician realized that one of the opening prayers could serve as a wonderful hymn. And it's, to me, a great close to the service tonight. God deserves praise in every thought that we think, every deed that we do. Anytime we're not actively thanking him, we're not giving him the glory he deserves. He has given us everything we have. Anytime we think that we have something besides what he's given us, we're just fooling ourselves. He deserves our praise every moment of every day, including the moments when we're thinking about other people who aren't part of our church family. Most of the unsaved people I interact with are at Greenville Technical College. Maybe they're in your commute, in your neighborhood. Maybe they're at your workplace. Maybe they're your friends at school. When you think about those people, are you thinking about the fact that God deserves praise from their lives and that you have the ticket to help them give him that praise? Let's stand together and sing a wonderful prayer, a prayer of thanksgiving. O great God. Thank you so much for worshiping with us tonight. Thank the Lord to each other as you go out and you are dismissed.